Welcome to Two Souls Podcast, a podcast to shift, impact, empower, and disrupt your consciousness, ultimately allowing you to thrive in this human experience. Now here are your hosts, Amber Megenhauser and Angela Blaha.
Welcome, everyone. So excited and happy that you are joining us for Two Souls Podcast. I'm Angela, and my co-host is Amber. How are you today, Amber?
Hello. Hello, everyone. Yes, we are so happy to have you with us here. What is our topic for today, Angela?
So, in my private sessions, this came up this last week, and I really wanted to sort of dive deeper into it. And it's all about feeding the soul versus feeding the human being. So, what does that really mean, right? So we know that we're living in times of change, and this, this is a positive thing. Yet we have to go through some bumpy areas in order to get to the other side. But what is change, right? Like we've talked about this before. Like, what is change? So moving from this feeding of the human being, which is where we've been focused, right? The whole ego is feeding the belief systems, feeding the emotions, feeding the physical body, but we've literally have not been feeding the soul. And this is where we're shifting our consciousness. We're shifting the consciousness from focusing on the ego, all the beliefs, all the emotions, to feeding the soul. But really, what is that? Like, what's feeding the soul?
I think
It's a
feeding the
foreign
soul
concept.
is, yeah. Like when you're first new to it, it is totally a foreign concept. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's not, I think people get caught up in the ego part of it too, where they think, oh, feeding the soul is just like making yourself happy. But it is so much more than that. It actually has nothing to do with that.
Right.
I feel like
So,
it's just, go ahead.
well, in your experience, like, what is feeding the soul? Like, how do we, because we're doing and how do we do things, right? Like, we always want to know how we do something. How do we actually feed the soul?
I think it is, finding stuff that you have so much passion about and knowing yourself so well that we talk a lot about like standards and you have these standards for yourself, and it's never settling for less. It's always wanting to do more. It's wanting to learn more. It's literally like becoming yourself and like knowing yourself so well that everything around you don't matter. Like that's what it is to me, where and everybody jumps in, like so many people judge you for things you do, choices you make, but in our reality, like when you feed your soul, everybody's opinions doesn't matter, because you feel so wonderful within yourself that you don't even care.
Yeah, I think that that's where we get confused. Like, we're always talking about alignment, and we're always talking about like being versus doing. But really, how do we make the shift? I think is what creates so many problems for people. Is how do we make that shift from doing, which is what we've had training in, to literally being soul focused, like listening to the intuition and following the intuition. Like, that is feeding, that's your soul talking, right? Intuition is not this foreign woo-woo
Yes.
concept. Intuition is you listening to your higher consciousness, the one that goes beyond the human and can see a bigger perspective, a bigger world, a bigger universe. And it's more aligned with, the what in meditation we call the Christed consciousness level, which is all about listening to that God self and following those intuitive hits, or that, those gut feelings, or those premonitions, or those, that's yourself, like seeing into the future. Can we do that? Absolutely. Jesus did it all the time. Why is it such a foreign concept for the rest of us? You know? So, yeah, when we're
I
talking
think
about
people,
feeding this, go ahead.
I think people just, you said it right. We're taught so much to like listen to our ego, and we have these amazing ideas and downloads that come in, but people just like disregard them like, oh, that's such a wild out there idea that it could never come true for me. And they literally think that's what it is. And it's like, if everybody did that, you would live in misery. But if you actually like listen and to what is coming in, you find your passion just by listening to yourself.
Yes. So if you don't know what your purpose is, what's the first steps? Like you had said it in the beginning, right? It's like, it's, what did you say? I can't remember now. Oh, knowing yourself.
Knowing yourself,
That's the
knowing
first
who you
step.
are
Is
is the step to
yeah.
everything.
Yes, exactly. I mean, without that, we're just floundering around. Honestly, let's just be
Yeah.
brutally honest here. We're just floundering around. So if you don't know and understand your emotions, ignorance is not the answer. You need to dive into them. You need to understand them. You need to know why or how you feel a certain way. But being ignorant about it, that's the past. We cannot stay in that energy any longer. Knowing how you think, knowing your patterns, like that's a huge, huge thing. Because when you know your patterns, you can make a decision to stay in them or to change them. Again, ignorance,
Yep.
you cannot claim ignorance any longer. And we're calling you to not do that. Like literally, we're like saying, yeah, no, it's time.
Yeah. It is
Yeah.
time. It
Yeah.
doesn't, and if you actually had a choice, if you knew what knowing yourself does for you versus living in that ego mind and in total misery, every single person would pick this side of the fence. It's just
Mm-hmm.
getting to there that I think people struggle with, because you do have to face everything you're afraid of. I mean, it comes front and center right in your face, but you know what? It makes you 10 times stronger, because you're totally right, because you figure out your patterns and you figure out, okay, why am I doing this? Is this working for me or is this not working for me? You actually can like dissect what is going on and figure out, oh, okay, that's who I want to be, or that's not who I want to be. You actually you become where you have a choice. You can pick, and I think that's the greatest part about like being so aware of yourself is like you know yourself so much where you're like, oh no, I don't really do that anymore. I know if I make that choice, I know that this is going to happen, and I'm good with that. So I think it just your awareness grows so much on that level that I mean, everybody wants to be on this side of the fence because it's seriously so amazing. Like, your life is just nothing's work, nothing's hard, nothing's like
Mm-hmm.
everything is just absolutely amazing.
Yes. Yeah. So what's been the most powerful part of, being in alignment with the soul or feeding the soul versus feeding the human for you?
I think listening to myself was very, very rewarding for me, because I was one of those people years ago that I seeked everything outside of my body. I thought other people made you happy. I thought other people did things for you. I thought everything had to do with like other people, how you treated other people, how other people treated you. And
Mm-hmm.
I think my biggest aha with all of this and the most rewarding was realizing I had my own voice. Not for anybody else, but for myself. And that that is where your power lies, because you just become so in control of yourself, and you didn't realize I didn't realize how out of control I was with myself. I mean, I was a mess years ago, and like that to me, like that feeling, that's what everybody should want to have. And yeah, I almost can't even explain it because it is such an amazing feeling. It completely changes you. It actually changes not just like how you feel, anything like that. It actually changes how you look in a really weird way. It changes your physical appearance, and not just by the way you dress either. It changes the look you carry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yes. You're the way that you like look at you, right? Like when you're talking about it, like it's just like this depth. Like that's what I notice about people is when they make this shift of consciousness, like there's a depth to people. There's no longer this sort of mask or zombie look any longer. It's like you want to speak with them. You want to have conversations. You want to see where the experience can go, right? But with those people who are sort of like don't want to make any change in their life or they have a lot of fear, I think that whole I think for me that's the most powerful thing is I have zero fear really about anything. I mean, I was very fearful years ago when I was, in my early 20s, and I was afraid of the world, honestly. But when you make that shift, like that all of the fears just sort of, they're not even, they don't even exist any longer because you know how powerful you are. You know that
No.
you can change things just with with your thoughts. You can change things with, you know, you can control things like the way that you said your control of yourself. When you're in control of yourself, there are no fears because you just don't
Nope.
even deal in fears any longer. You deal in truth. You deal in alignment with who you really are. You deal in that higher consciousness, which sees things very, very differently. I think that's another powerful component to feeding the soul or being in alignment with the soul is really how there's no the doubt all dissipates, like none of that sort of stuff. None of those lower vibrations even exist in your awareness any longer.
No. No. And it's actually kind of crazy, and I don't know if we should talk about this or not. Should we talk about the experience I had this past week with some fear that,
Yeah.
fear actually comes in different forms. And once you become so aware and you don't carry like, the regular fears everybody carries, those simple things. Like once you move out of anything like with the ego, you let go a lot of those fears, but they do come up without you really realizing that that is what's going on. So this past week I had quite the experience, and I don't know if anybody knows, but Angela and I have this amazing business. You guys should all come check out our eatery because it's going to be amazing. But part of doing this, and I think it was like a fear of self-employment success, so to say, because I've never really been a total entrepreneur before. And so I started having this trouble with my knee, and I didn't really pay too much attention to it right at first. And as things progressed, like in our business, I noticed that it had shifted from one knee to both knees. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So as we're going, we did a ton of painting in our new facility. And the day after we did this, I was like, okay, I cannot take this anymore. When I got home that night, I got in the shower and I'm like, okay, I really need to work through this. So I worked really hard on moving this energy out of my knee because I knew that's what it was. And as I'm doing this, I knew I needed to pull something. So I pulled on both of my knees, and I actually pulled a snake off of each one of my knees, which was like, it was so crazy. I just almost can't even explain it to you guys. And then after I got out of the shower, I actually threw one up also. So I'm like, okay, am I finally releasing this? Like, I've worked for 3 days on trying to move this crap through my body and I couldn't. But it is, every bit of it had to do with that fear of success and like moving forward. It's like my knees were like planted in the back, but
Mhm.
everything else in me was moving forward. And so I've had this crazy experience with just becoming an entrepreneur and not even realizing like the fear I had within myself, and I was holding on to it energetically and not even realizing it. So like we get these physical pains in our body, but a lot of people will be like, oh, I hurt my knee trying to paint the wall at our new building today, but that is not the case. Like every bit of that is energetically, and I've completely moved it out of one knee now, and I'm still just have a little bit left in the other one. So after that experience happened, it was like that, and the one knee totally stopped. So I know it is energetically. So like that's also about like feeding the soul, where when you keep feeding it, like the things that you are holding on to that you need to release from come up. And this is exactly why this happened the way it did. Like every time I tried to move forward, I kept having these knee problems, not realizing that it was actually like a fear of success because I didn't know what entrepreneurship looked like on the other side, so to say. So this has been like a really amazing experience in a weird way. But our mind cannot help but just look at the physical pain. So people need to just
Mhm.
like open up their mind to like other things, because it's it's not just black and white. It's not just, oh, I have a pain in my knee, like I had to have heard it. That's not actually the way it happens. If you really dive into it, like it took me actually weeks to figure out what this is, because I too wanted to go to the physical part of it, and I'm
Mhm.
like, what did I do? How did I hurt this? And it had nothing to do with that. And that's exactly why it wouldn't heal up either, until I finally went through and really tried to move it through my body. And now it's like gone.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
totally of
That's a
feeding the soul type of thing, because you have to dive deeper.
Yeah, the soul doesn't exist on the surface. It doesn't exist in our hair
No.
color. It doesn't exist in our physical appearance. The soul exists in all aspects of us, right? It exists in the mental, the
Yes.
emotions, the physical body, our energy, our frequency, our attitudes, our personalities. Like it exists in all of it. And so, yeah, this is a great example of how to move through things so that you do literally feed the soul. And you do have to address the fears, right? You have to address the fears. And with every
Yeah.
fear, there's emotions attached, there's patterns attached, there's belief systems attached, there's, the physical, the visceral portion of it, which is what we all experience that, but yours,
Yep.
you actually moved through it, right? You releasing from it.
Yep.
So yeah, this whole concept of shifting consciousness and creating this new earth and all of these kinds of things, it's not about feeding the human any longer. It's and all of the that kind of thing. It's about feeding the soul and having soulful experiences, and soulful experiences like you just expressed. Some of them are a little bit painful, or we see them as painful, but really it's all about conquering and moving through the fears that we have.
Yep. And it's
Yeah.
actually as painful or as easy as you make it, because I held on to this crap for weeks before I actually moved it through me. And then the minute I
So what
did,
do you
one was already gone.
yeah, so what do you know about yourself now? Like, what's the depth of what your experience was?
I know that I hold on to things and just don't even realize it. And I have this issue of I will make myself suffer before, even though I already knew a week ago what I needed to do. And I don't even know why I didn't do it. I don't know if it's cuz like my physical body, like we've had a conversation before too, where like I have to see things physically sometimes, and so I think I allow myself to go through the physical portion of it so I can understand it. so to say. And it's weird. Everybody does their like own way. Everybody has their own version of how they move through
Mm-hmm.
things through them. And you can make it easier, you can make it hard, but like I physically sometimes need to see it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
also why my migraines too, like I allowed myself to be that sick because I had to have the physical feeling with it. So I have learned that about myself. I don't like it, but I have learned that I actually like make myself go through this suffering period because it helps me understand the other side of it, if that makes sense.
Totally. And, that's part of the human experience is to feel physically. But instead of labeling it as suffering, let's take a different look at that and see it as changing the DNA, because really that's what's happening in the physical body when it feels pain. There's a literal DNA change happening, and sometimes the only awareness that I want to say that we create or that we can recognize is the physical pain. Again, that's from our past, right? As human race, it's from the past. Like that's how we've experienced humanity. Being a human is through the physicalness. And so it doesn't mean that we believe in pain and suffering. It could be that that's how the awareness arrives and how we can know that we've actually changed the beliefs, the patterns, the fears, right? Like we've changed them. So it's a recognition really of, oh, this is what I experienced. This was the fear. This is how I changed it. And so you don't have to deal with it again. So, when we have an expanded version of what it really could be, it makes it easier to move through the body, the physical body. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I totally didn't want to use the word suffer, but yeah, I guess I really didn't realize I used that until you said it. But you're totally right. It's not about being in the suffering, it's a way for the mind to relate because our
Mm-hmm.
mind can't help but look at the past. So it has to relate it somehow. So it shows me physically, and then I know what I need to do. But I do
Yeah.
allow myself to experience that pain for a few days before I move it through. And not even a few days. Actually, I've been dealing with this for like a few weeks. So yeah, I don't know why I do that, but it is something I do. And then, yeah, it just helps me
Yeah.
understand the whole picture.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it's the same as like for me, like I emotionally have to feel things. Like that's how I know when I move through things is through the emotional body. And a lot of people move through things through the physical body. I've always had really great control of the physical body. I don't know why or how that even happened. I can bypass any pain in the physical body like nothing. And so, but we all have our ways that we move through things. The point is to be aware of them and say, okay, well, while I'm moving through something here, right? Instead of going down into depression or going into doubt or fear even deeper, it's the recognition of, oh, I'm having some physical pain here. I must be working through something. Well, now it gives you an opportunity to say, well, what is it that I get to work through, right? Instead of seeing it as this detrimental, oh gosh, I can't move today. We need to start looking at, okay, well, this is a soul experience, and what human fear do I have that no longer serves me, because that's what pain is, and how can I move it into feeding the soul versus, like entrepreneurship. It's a scary deal, especially in the beginning when we've come from a regular paycheck to sometimes no paycheck, and then all of a sudden we get money at the end. That's the whole fear. That's the whole fear about being an entrepreneur. It's not that you don't have the skills to do it. It's about the money portion generally for, well, I'm going to say 99% of humans, right? It's the money portion
Yeah.
because it's scary not having that regular feeding
Yeah.
of money. But
Yes.
so when we move through that and we're like, oh God, how am I going to support myself? How am I going to do this? That creates all kinds of crazy fears. And it drudges up past when you maybe, didn't have enough money to, you lived paycheck to paycheck, or, your family was poor. Like my family was extremely poor when I was growing up. And, that's always, every time I take on a new entrepreneur business, it's like, I don't even think about those things anymore. The very first business that I owned, I thought about those kinds of things. But then I noticed was like, there was always a plentiful of money, it was always moving in and out, in and out, in and out. And it was like, there's gobs of money here, so that whole thing wasn't even a fear any longer. And I love being my own boss. I love creating businesses. I mean, that's just a passion. And so, but yours was really, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was pretty much based around the whole money, right?
Yes.
Leadership,
Absolutely.
stepping into
Yep.
pure leadership.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly what it was. It just, I think it's that unknown. And you're right. I have had a job like since I was 13 years old. I mean, you had the regular paycheck. So it is like just an old paradigm that I carried because I don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, well, nobody ever knows what business looks like, but you have to trust your
No.
own intuitiveness, right? You have to trust the intuition that we're on the right path. It's just like we went to buy a new stove a different stove, and it was, when we got there, it was sold. We came purposefully to check out this stove, had an appointment set up and everything, and the person sold it right before we got there, and we're like, what? How does this happen? And then we walk out the door, and I said, well, apparently the universe has a different avenue for us. And we go to a different store to do a little bit more finding of things. And the lady calls back and says, well, they don't want it. It doesn't fit in their space. Are you still interested? And I said, when you talk to the universe, right? Because walked out and I said, what's the new path, universe? It conspires for you, right? Like it works for you. And it's like, well, show me the direction. If it wasn't the direction, if this wasn't the path, then what is? Because I thought this came in, it was like weird how it came in. It was spur of the moment. That's generally how things work. Is they just pop up. They just pop into your life. And then you're like, yeah, this is totally it. That's how I know that I'm on the right path generally, is things just pop in,
Yeah.
But anyway, that's feeding the soul. That's another example of literally feeding the soul. If this wasn't the right path, then show me what is, because I don't have any other avenues here,
And actually the whole feeding the soul thing goes along with our whole business we're creating. I mean, you have to listen to yourself. Like our whole process with that was actually quite an experience. And it came to the point where we were questioning, is this really meant for us? Because some things weren't aligning up and we were just like, what the heck is going on? And we almost came to a point where we were like, maybe this isn't for us. Like, let's just take a step back for a minute.
Yeah.
And the minute we took a step back, it literally found us. Like, that's how like, and the same thing with the stove. Like, the minute we were like, okay, I guess that's not for us. No, it just like, it came back to us. So like, if you really pay attention to if you're feeding the soul or not, like things find you. You don't search for them. They literally come in all different, anything you can imagine, whether it's somebody saying something to you or, like the stove thing happening, like seriously, everything happens for a reason. And if you open up your eyes and your awareness to actually listening to other people's, I think that's the key word too. Like everybody wants to project their own stuff. but not very many people are good listeners, and especially at listening to themselves. That is how you feed your soul, is you listen to yourself.
Exactly. Perfect place to end this podcast.
We would like to thank everybody for joining us. If you have something you would like us to discuss, please feel free to reach out to one of us. We would love to help any way we can, or go more in depth about a topic to help. Until next time, from our soul to yours, have a super fantastic day.